So, as the line between far-right MAGA ideology and open-faced Nazism is growing blurrier by the day, the division it's causing, certainly from us, looking in from the left, is very interesting to watch. Now, in today's featured story, the Turning Point USA rally last week gets broken down on Newsmax. Imagine that. Welcome to Occupy Democrats, and hit the subscribe button if you think, like we do, that Barron Trump's new bestie, international human trafficker Andrew Tate, is a dangerous freak.
My heart goes out to all of you. You know, I'm kind of thinking we should bring the Nazi salute back, because the people we've been arguing with for the last 4 years have no interest in objective truth. Hail SpaceX!
Oh, man, where'd he get that from? Oh, right. That's right. Now, before we take you into the belly of the beast of GOP hate and MAGA neo-Nazism, that'd be our featured story today from earlier this morning on Newsmax. Well, the march to neo-Nazism is a divisive problem for everyone in that evil cabal. Vance, Kevin Roberts, Nick Fuentes, Steve Bannon, the list goes on. And as they begin to eat their own alive, well, wait till you see our featured story. It's just coming up next. But let's remember that their hateful impulses have been on display since this remarkable rally 5 years ago.
It's been 5 years since a self-described white supremacist drove through a crowd of counter-protesters at the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia. One person was killed and dozens of others were hurt. In the wake of the tragedy, local officials faced criticism for their handling of security concerns leading up to the rally. Meanwhile, the violence prompted a national conversation about racism and First Amendment rights in the U.S. So for more on this, I want to bring in Amy Spitalnik. She's the executive director of the nonprofit Integrity First for America. Her organization actually supported plaintiffs in a federal lawsuit against the organizers of the rally. I'm really happy that you're joining us now. I think that when people saw the video of men holding tiki torches saying Jews will not replace us, many Americans were shocked. But what we know now, in hindsight, is that there were red flags and missed opportunities. Can you talk to me a little bit about the red flags that were missed and the lessons that we've learned since then?
Absolutely. You are exactly right. There were many red flags leading up to Unite the Right. And what we also know is that Unite the Right really has previewed the cycle of extremism that's followed over the last 5 years. As our lawsuit detailed, the plans for the violence happened meticulously online for months and months in advance on sites like Discord, Facebook, and other social media channels. And in those plans, they talked about everything from what to wear to whether they could hit protesters with cars and claim self-defense, which is, of course, precisely what happened. And so the violence was no accident. It was planned meticulously. These extremists then went to Charlottesville to engage in that violence, and then they celebrated that violence. Our lawsuit finally held them accountable over 4 years after the violence in a trial last fall to the tune of millions and millions of dollars. But we also know that in the years since, we've seen the rhetoric, the ideology, the political violence on display at Unite the Right become increasingly normalized in our politics and our society. And so it only illustrates the importance of much broader accountability at this moment.
Okay, to her point of accountability, we take you into the bastion of right-wing rhetoric, it's hard to say, from Newsmax. It happened earlier today. Let's check out this very interesting analysis of the growing divide at the base of Trump's MAGA base.
Full disclosure, I used to write for the Jerusalem Post at one point years ago, but it was written by Rabbi Stephen Berg, a former director with the Simon Wiesenthal Center. The rabbi says he was moved to write the opinion piece after hearing Ben Shapiro's remarks at last weekend's massive Turning Point USA America Fest convention. Here's a clip from that.
If you host a Hitler apologist, Nazi-loving, anti-American piece of refuse like Nick Fuentes, you know, the Nick Fuentes who said that the Vice President of the United States is a, quote, fat gay race traitor married to a the person who said that Charlie Kirk was a, quote, idiot. The person who said, and pardon my language here, it's his quote, that he, quote, took Turning Point USA and it, and that's why it's filled with groypers. If you have that person on your show and you proceed to glaze him, you ought to own it.
Benjamin Anthony is co-founder and CEO of the Miriam Institute and an IDF combat veteran. Well, let's bring him in. There you are to talk about this more. You served, correct me if I'm wrong, with the IDF on the ground during the latest war, and you're joining us live from Israel today. First of all, thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. What do you think of the from Ben Shapiro? You know, the point that the rabbi made in that article, and you probably read it, is that there needs to be more folks coming out like Shapiro, Mark Levin as well, and really taking aim at Tucker for allowing this and bringing people like this on his show. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, so first of all, John, thank you very much for having me. I wish you and your viewers a wonderful Christmas, for those who are celebrating, and an equally wonderful New Year. And you're correct, I did have the privilege of serving here inside the Gaza Strip during the course of this most recent war, but I'm far from exceptional for that, as you know, because I'm a huge fan of your reporting. There were 400,000 Israeli men and women beyond myself who did all that I did and a great deal more. So thank you. I think that
thank you.
We need to understand, we need to recognize that the Republican Party is going to have a fight within itself for its identity. And it's very apparent that there are thought leaders who are front runners for the governing philosophy right now of that party. Now, it's particularly important that I address myself to this, because were I to be an American, which I'm not, I would be somebody who was aligned with the Republican Party without any question whatsoever. And so I feel a greater responsibility to call this out when I see it. So there are a number of problems that I saw at AmFest. Firstly, you'll have noticed that Steve Bannon and other speakers removed the phrase Judeo from the phrase Judeo-Christian values. They're now talking about Christendom and Christianizing America. And I, as a Jewish listener who's a huge fan of America, don't find a place for myself in a philosophy that eliminates and erases deliberately the word Judeo. That's number one. Secondly, I was very troubled that Megyn Kelly said that the right would reign supreme if not for the schism within the party. And then she went on to identify that the sole schism and most significant schism was actually the subject of Israel. The inference being if we could just remove that or the schism surrounding it, then the left would never return to power. I think that that's stigmatizing the subject of Israel in a way that's completely unforgivable. And then thirdly, I'm very troubled about the fact that Steve Bannon is using terms to describe Ben Shapiro, such as he being, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's an accurate paraphrasing, he is a metastasizing cancer on the conservative movement. This is the lingo of disease spreading that, quite frankly, we heard during the Third Reich. I'm not surprised that someone like Bannon is recycling that. And I think that after dealing with those three, it's important to note that Carlson is the progenitor and the propagator of some of the worst canards imaginable. Namely, he is saying openly that Israel is killing Christians in the Middle East with weapons supplied by America, lobbied for by American Jews. That is a blood libel. It needs to be called out. And while I appreciate that Ben Shapiro is doing so, I think that many of the thought leaders, including Ben Shapiro himself, who I believe ultimately is a force for good and forthright, clear philosophy in the Conservative Party, I think they've been too slow to do so. I think he was too slow to remove Candace Owens from his platform, The Daily Wire, when she first started to spew absolute bile against the Jewish people.
Yeah.
And I think he's got another challenge on his hands, John, if I may. I think there's an emergent anti-Israel voice still on that platform by the name of Matt Walsh. Now, a lot of people say, well, you can't cancel people. I'm not advocating for cancelling. I'm just saying people can do and say what they want. They can't just do and say what they want everywhere and anywhere. And those people should be shown the door at Ben Shapiro's organization, in my opinion. But look, we all see through what he's doing. It is anti-Semitism, it's Jew hatred, and it's the worst canards that we can possibly imagine. And I believe his next step, in addition to saying that we are killing Christians in the Middle East falsely and that we are the purveyors of usury, something he said just a couple of weeks ago, his next thing will be to say that the Jewish people are the spreaders of disease. Why do I believe that? Because he, like Bannon, is recycling the propagandist, anti-Jewish, Jew-hating messages and nonsense that we know from the Third Reich. This is not new to us because there's nothing new under the sun.
Benjamin Anthony, what a pleasure to have you on. Really appreciate you. God bless you. God bless the IDF. God bless Israel as well. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Great to see you. Come on again. And I hope I get to talk to you again.
Now, kind of selective outrage. I mean, sure, Benjamin Anthony addressed neo-Nazi fueled hate in relation to Israel. That's his jam, right? But it seems to me that we lose by calling out specific hate of blacks or Jews, or the Irish, for example, secularly. Maybe the banner that will unite us is to find those who hate, directed at anyone for any reason. So please count me in as deeply prejudiced against racism and intolerance. Under that tent, justice for all becomes the rallying cry, and there would be many more of us than there are of them.